Welcome everybody to the opening conference of Eastern Circle's discussion season on energy diplomacy. For those who do not know us, Eastern Circles is a geoeconomics think tank focusing on the interconnection between politics and business in the post-Soviet region. My name is Gabrielle Valli, Vice President and co-founder of Eastern Circles. For today's conference, I will kindly ask you to mute your microphone and write your questions in the chat. And now I will give the floor to Anastasia, President of Eastern Circles.
Thank you, Gabriel. Today, we will talk about Ukraine and its evolving role in the EU energy security. In the last 10 years, the trend has been that the volume of natural gas coming from Russia to Europe through Ukraine has been steadily declining, especially in the view of constructing new infrastructure, be it Nord Stream, Blue Stream, Turk Stream, or Nord Stream 2, which is now pretty much at the verge of being launched. The impact, of course, of all of this infrastructure on Ukraine's strategic importance for the EU and its role in the European energy security has been dramatic. And that's what we're going to be discussing today, especially how these developments and impact Ukraine's evolving role, how they impact Ukraine's own internal energy security and the energy mix, and what can be Ukraine's value proposition for the EU in this new reality. All of these questions we're going to be discussing with co-founder and president of Dixie Group, Ukraine's leading energy think tank, Olena Pavlenko. Hello, Olena. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you very much for coming.
And we are going to proceed in the following fashion. Olena will have 10 minutes, the floor to herself to give her introductory remarks. Then we're going to exchange a few questions between moderator and Olena, so myself and her, and then we're going to open the floor to discussion and to the questions from you. So please do not have to wait to ask a question. As Gabriel said, you can ask them directly in the chat during this whole time, and then we're going to select which questions to ask, to address, or then raise your hand once the floor is open as well. So, Olena, to you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for your interest in Ukraine, and thank you for the possibility to explain a bit about Ukraine and its role in the EU energy security. As actually Anastasia said, I'm a co-founder and president of Dixie Group. This is Ukrainian think tank which works on energy issues and is established in 2008. Yeah, we have a team of 20 people. Some of them are here, and they also will be ready to join the discussion. Yes, I hope we will have a really great conversation today. So let me start my presentation. I was asked to do the presentation within 10 minutes, so I'll try. I'll do my best. Do you see my slides now? Okay. So maybe with some more general issues. So about what are the sources of gas supply to the EU? So you know that it's Russia, Norway, Algeria, Libya, LNG. If we talk about Russia, it's about 30 up to 40% of general gas supply. But LNG, as you see, the share of LNG is steadily increasing with such suppliers as Qatar and the US and also Russia, actually. I was interested actually because there were discussions during this 2021 how much the exports from Russia decreased to the EU. So I just tried to compare with the periods before. So you can see that in comparison to 2020, the volume of Russian gas supply actually didn't decrease, while in comparison with previous periods, it decreased, but not so much. So just if in case someone of you had the same question, so probably it might help. The transit routes from Russia to the EU. There are routes through Belarus, Europe. There are several routes through Ukraine, and there are gas pipelines which are actually owned by Gazprom and Nord Stream 2, and also Turk Stream and Blue Stream, which goes to Turkey. So I mean, I put some calculations there regarding the capacity. We can actually do some calculations how much volumes can be transported in case this or that gas route will be excluded or will be stopped. Yeah, maybe we can do this a bit later. What I would like to say as a next, that actually gas transit through Ukraine is decreasing. So if you look at from the perspective, we really transported a lot during this 2017-2019 period. But in 2020, there was, of course, a decrease in gas supply because of decrease in consumption, because our pandemic situation. While in 2021, as far as I understand and calculate, there will be an increase in gas demand and in gas consumption. Actually, that's normal, because all economies, including European economy, are trying to recover now. But if you look at how Russia is using different routes in comparison between these routes, you can see that actually Ukrainian route is, or the gas volumes which go through Ukraine are decreasing when the new routes appear. So Turk Stream, it's quite good, well visible now. Turk Stream, when it's appeared, the volumes through Ukrainian routes actually were the first which decreased, while the Nord Stream and the Belarus transit, actually they were more or less stable. But just looking 2021, you can see that Belarus route is decreasing as well, while Nord Stream is increasing. And this tendency, I would say, yes, that Ukrainian route and Belarus route are in the least priority, will probably remain for the next few months. Sorry, I could not translate the left graph, but this is a gas transit via Ukraine in 2021. And you can see that even though the Gazprom has contracted volumes, it decreased the transit volumes 3 times during this year. So in January, there was an increase from 186 million cubic meters to 124. Then in September, there was from 124 to 109. And then in October, from 109 to 86 million. So which is less than contracted, although yes, Gazprom is paying for the capacity which is contracted. And we also noticed that the additional capacities for the Yamal Europe is not booked. So we think that it might mean that Ukrainian route and gas route, Belarus route, will remain, just to cover some peaks, while the main routes will be of course, Russian pipelines, Nord Stream 2, Nord Stream 1, sorry, Turk Stream, and demand actually to start operations of Nord Stream 2. That's what might happen. Although again, I read today that gas flow through Belarus increased recently, and through Ukraine it also increased. So Russia started to increase some gas transport through these pipelines, but I mean, maybe within the months there will be some changes in plans, or within 2 months. So we cannot say for sure how these two pipelines will operate. Of course, it had its impact on the prices. So, as I said, we of course can talk about other reasons like economic recovery, the situation and demand in gas market in Asia, but this I would say instability with gas supply from Russian side was also a reason, part of the reasons, because what Gazprom did, it actually fulfilled all its contractual obligations, but it was hardly possible to book some capacities and additional volumes on a short-term perspective. So the company just could not order this additional gas volumes in a short-term perspective, and also Gazprom did not fill its gas storages as it was before. While in Europe during this summer period, the gas storages are filled for more than 70%. The Gazprom storages, the latest data I saw was 27-30%, which is not like in the previous periods. So we personally think it's all these issues are related to the Nord Stream 2 demand to start its operation. If you look at the dates, so in September, Russia completed Nord Stream 2 construction. In October, there was a statement from the Russian president that every moment, Gazprom is ready to transport gas through this route. So probably there is some attempts, yes, from Russia side not to use Ukrainian and Belarus route and to wait until there will be a decision to start Nord Stream 2. Let me then also shortly say about what's going on in Ukraine, because this is, Ukraine in the EU situation. Now, what's going on with Ukrainian gas sector? This is an assessment made by Energy Community, which assessed all energy community member countries, contracting countries, sorry. And you can see that actually Ukraine has quite a good scores in terms of gas sector development. What is assessed? The implementation and transposition of European directives in different sectors, including gas, electricity, oil, environmental issues, and others. So the same is the same, I would say, results we see from European Federation of Energy Traders. They assess the level of market development, and Ukraine also has quite good scores from them, which means that the market is more or less flexible. We have 50 foreign traders already in gas market in Ukraine. It's not fully open because the gas prices for households now are regulated because of the coronavirus crisis. Although we opened the market for households for some period of time last year. So the tendency is quite positive. The gas consumption is decreasing. Yes, there was a huge decrease in 2014 when the war started, and we had some territories which were captured. But in general, because of increasing of gas prices for households, for industry, and making them more market-oriented, people are interested to use to consume wisely, and the level of consumption is decreasing. Now we consume around 30 billion cubic meters of gas, which is, yes, I believe it's quite a lot in comparison to EU countries, but still less than we did it before. Now, how Ukraine can be helpful within all this gas crisis issues. First of all, of course, I would like to mention our gas storages, because we have the total capacity 30 billion cubic meters of gas storages. And if you look at the discussions which European Commission now has what to do in the long-term perspective to prevent a possible gas crisis in the future, strategic gas storages or strategic gas reserves might be one of the solutions. So Ukraine actually might contribute to such solution with its own storages. And I have to say that some of gas traders already use our storages for several years. We'll be happy to show you some data, but you can easily also find this data at the website of our Ukrtransgaz operator, gas storage operator. Another option is flexibility from the Ukrainian side, because on the left graph you can see that some pipelines which Russia use, and it's mostly actually relevant to water pipelines, Nord Stream and also Turk Stream. They cannot work in a very flexible regime. While Ukrainian pipeline, because it has a very developed network, it can work very flexible. And Gazprom actually usually balance the gas supply through Ukrainian gas pipeline system. And if you remember the situation which happened just, I think, a week ago, when the new route started to supply gas to Hungary from through Bulgaria, there was a problem with gas supply, because the Bulgarian pipeline is old, and actually there was I think some yeah, how it's in English? Yeah, rupture. Sorry, it's written here. So there was some rupture, and the gas stopped. In case if this gas flow goes through Ukraine, Ukraine can reroute the gas transit through its pipelines, and not to stop gas supply to the country. And transparency. I cannot say that all Ukrainian government bodies and everything is very much transparent, but I have to say that in gas sector, you really can find a lot of data, what's happening in gas sector, and especially what's happening with our gas transit system and our gas storages. Because we have to compete, that's normal. We have to develop ourselves. And I'm really glad that our transmission system operator and Ukrtransgaz storage system operator, they provide data in real time, so you can easily check how much gas is stored, and residents, non-residents, how much gas came through entry point, how much gas went through the exit point. So you can monitor a lot through this. I think I will stop here. I have a lot of additional information about Ukrainian energy sector, so we can discuss this. Yeah, depending on what you will ask and what you will comment, I will be happy to talk more. Thank you very much.
Turning to the questions, maybe I'll start with this one, just bouncing off your presentation and your slide about the cumulative capacity of the non-Ukrainian transit gas pipelines being at 190 billion cubic meters a year. So that includes Nord Stream, Blue Stream, Turk Stream, alternative pipeline through Belarus, and the future Nord Stream 2. Now, if we look at Gazprom export report for 2020, they have reported 175 billion cubic meters total export to Europe last year, which was a crisis year. It was around 190 or 200 the years before. And Gazprom is the monopoly exporter of Russian gas via the pipeline. So that brings us to a realization that after Nord Stream 2, Russia can cover all of its needs in terms of gas transit, and export to Europe without Ukraine. The question is, why does Europe still need Ukraine?
Yeah, I tried to answer with the very concrete facts. I'm happy to probably I will try to I will repeat them, but maybe I will add some more arguments. So again, if you have the water pipelines, you will have pipelines which are not so flexible. If you look at the stress tests which were made by NSOG, I suppose, I'm happy to share the link later. It was in 2017, but also in 2020. And I could not find this in the document of 2020, but I have found in the document of 2017 the stress test what happened if something happened with Nord Stream 2. And the solution was written that let's increase gas transit through Ukraine. But the question here is that if we keep the pipeline with 140 billion cubic meter capacity, it will demand quite a lot of costs, to maintain it. And it's like, you cannot transport like 10 or 15 BCM or keep such backup option with such a huge pipeline. Yeah. You either have to use it for some profitable, with some profitable volumes, or you have to just stop it. In case you stop it, then the question what to do with the backup options in case some water pipelines will stop will remain. Also, if you look at the analysis which was done by, I think, ISIS recently, also happy to share the links who are interested. They analyzed gas supply if only Nord Stream 2 and Nord Stream 1 pipelines used, and Opal to what happened with Baumgarten gas hub. And it seems that without Ukraine, there will be still lack of how to say propositions. So the demand will not be covered.
Or if demand grows, for example, as well, just imagine as a result of economic recovery. However, what you evoked is one thing is this maintenance cost of the pipeline. So who's going to foot the bill? Because the pipeline capacity overall is much greater than whatever backup need may arise in case there is an interruption of this or that pipeline. Another kind of maybe use we could speak of, maybe more in the long term, right, is hydrogen. And I don't know what you think about that, and what is the capacity of Ukraine to fit into that more today, a strategic vision and not a reality, not a market reality yet. However, as Europe is European Green Deal has announced the ambition to have decarbonized energy sector by 2050, we're really looking at a phase out of natural gas in the long run, and an increasing trend in favor of hydrogen, especially green hydrogen from renewable energy sources. How does Ukraine position itself on this, and how adaptable and usable is the current gas pipeline for these long-term goals?
Mm-hmm. Let me start from your last question, and then, if you don't mind, I will use some of my slides so people can, you dear colleagues, you will just it will be easier to listen if I show something. So the last question was what's going on now. I mean, Ukraine is in the European hydrogen strategy. I think there are 10 gigawatts which are written as a possible generation of hydrogen in Ukraine. And yes, there are a lot of discussions, and not only discussions in Ukraine. So what we have now with the hydrogen, we have a roadmap which was written by the UN experts. It's just a pre-analytical document to the strategy, hydrogen strategy, which is under development now. And I hope we will see something in the middle of next year. Transmission system operator is developing its own assessment and strategy. the TSO promises to show some results in the end of 2022 and start some experiments, let's say, in 2024. While distribution system operators, they already started some experiments. They already mix hydrogen with gas and use them, not, of course, not, they do not supply to households now, but they test the system. So their main results are that Ukrainian system can transport 20% mix of hydrogen and gas. And for more, we will need more isolation of gas pipelines, because our pipelines at the distribution level and at the transmission level, they are more air pipelines, not under the ground. So they have more pressure in terms of changes of temperature. And hydrogen molecules, they are smaller than the gas. So the pipeline should be more isolated to be able to transport it. So we need some more preparation work if we want to mix more than 20% gas and hydrogen. But in general, the work is doing and the testing is in place. And there are several projects which already started. I don't know at what stage they are, but I know that there are some tries to start offshore the hydrogen production from the offshore wind in the south of Ukraine, and also some green ammonia production from hydrogen in the center of Ukraine, in the regions. So people are trying to do some sort of startups. We'll see how it will go on. Regarding the, if I may continue my short presentation on situation in Ukraine, just
Can I just follow-up question just on what you've just said about hydrogen? Just a quick follow-up question is, so if I understand correctly, the strategy then is to produce clean hydrogen in Ukraine and then use the current pipelines to transport it. Is this the only piece of the strategy, or does Ukraine also ambition to position itself on other, let's say, links of the industrial value chain of hydrogen, including production of electrolyzers or fuel cells, production of the hydrogen tanks, or pumping stations, which is also something needed? And another question about this strategy that you were expressing, producing hydrogen in Ukraine and transporting it, is today the European documents which are written about hydrogen, they emphasize the importance of the production centers being very close to consumption centers, because that kind of cuts down the cost, which is already relatively high. So how does this strategy, producing very far and then transporting, address that?
Answering your first question, I think the service, infrastructure, they may come depending on how the generation or production will develop. So I know that distribution system operators, they actually started to some small projects on some equipment and how to develop possible equipments for the hydrogen production and transportation. But I think maybe it's too early to say, because there should be maybe separate overview of this market, service market, which is developing. I know that Germany, and we have some German colleagues here, maybe they also can comment or add, the Germany, which started several projects on hydrogen production and use of hydrogen for example, steel production. The Germany is discussing how to support Ukraine with this. And this business-to-business communication and cooperation, including also the development of the service issues, might have some success. Although I think it may be a bit too early to say. Regarding your second question on how far, yes, the production can be from the consumption. So as of now, I think it again too early to say how much hydrogen we can produce for export and how much we can produce for our internal use. Why? Because we still do not understand, what is and how the EU taxonomy will look like. So what will be allowed to export in terms of color of the hydrogen. So if the EU will demand only hydrogen produced from renewables, I think for Ukraine it will be quite a tough task, because we have to develop too much renewables, which then means development of our transmission system very well to be able to accept all this electricity, and also develop additional support schemes, which again, it's quite complicated. If we talk about, I don't know, yellow or pink hydrogen developed from nuclear, well, Ukraine has quite a good, well-developed nuclear generation, and I think here we can talk about some export capacities.
That's what you mean by taxonomy, because that question, just for the listeners who haven't followed closely this issue, hasn't yet been decided and clearly by the European Commission whether hydrogen on the basis of nuclear is going to be welcome or not in this new configuration.
Yeah, I heard that. I mean, I saw, yes, from Euractiv in these documents that there are still discussions on gas and nuclear. So
this is it. Yeah, the discussions are going to be very. I cannot imagine the intensity of that. But I see that Roman has raised his hand, and since Roman, just for everybody else to understand, it's not a Q&A session. Roman is Elena's colleague, and that's why we're giving him the word now, because I think he wants to compliment. And no, Elena, it's up to you, of course, if to allow Roman to speak.
Yes, sure. He's my colleague. We'll be happy. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Anastasia. Well, I need to say that the government still develops the national hydrogen strategy, and we believe that internal consumption would be also part of it and developing the whole value chain. I can only mention that some of the pilot projects or initiatives which are either starting right now in Ukraine also touch upon using green hydrogen in ammonia production cycle, which can be used also locally for the purpose of fertilizer industry, but also for exports using the ammonia pipeline we have now, and which is currently used for transit and exports of ammonia produced in Russia mainly. And as for decarbonization of Ukraine's gas system, I have also to mention biomethane as a more closer option than hydrogen, which is more a long-term option. Just last month, the parliament adopted a law to promote production of biomethane and use of biomethane in the gas system. So we expect that with some additional regulations adopted at secondary level, we will have new projects, biomethane production projects coming online and being connected to Ukrainian gas system, thus making the whole, balance of gases more decarbonized in the system.
Yeah. Well, talking about biomethane, I have to say that we have some producers they already produce biogas, but some additional equipment is needed to produce biomethane from biogas. But we saw that there is an interest from some industrial players to play this game, and to try to increase gas, let's say, production, yes, in Ukraine, not only through the gas, not only from the subsoil, but also from biomethane production. May I use this opportunity just to go through quickly some slides to explain what's happening with energy sector in general? Again, this is an assessment which energy community is doing every year of for every energy community contracting party, including Ukraine. So if you want to track what's going on with energy sector of Ukraine, you can visit energy community website, and easily every year you will see this assessment of progress. So again, in the electricity sector, we have more or less progress, moderate, but progress, because we have the law on electricity market in place, which is in line with the EU directives, but the implementation is still goes with some challenges, I would say. Happy to explain a bit later. In gas sector, we have the highest scores, again, because I would say we already are in the process of joining the European market. In oil, because Ukraine did not implement the directive on oil stocks, we still have very moderate assessment, sorry. In renewables, Ukraine is doing good in terms of development. We have around 10% of renewables in our electricity generation, but there are also some challenges. I believe some French companies and German companies, investors in Ukrainian renewable sector can comment it, because I mean the state generated some debt, and we have to solve the problem how to pay the debts to our foreign investors, and then invite others to develop the sector. Energy efficiency, the law on energy efficiency was adopted just recently, which quite ambitious goals. So I think there will be some investments, and also loans opportunities, and also IFI's support to develop energy efficiency measures in Ukraine, in industry, in residential sector. Actually, in residential sector, we have a very huge potential, because 80% of Ukrainian residential buildings were built before 1991. They consume from 40 to 70% more energy than the new one. So huge potential for energy efficiency and for decrease energy consumption. Environmental issues and climate issues, again, moderate, because we do have some documents adopted, like in the second NDC, but NECP is an energy and climate plan is still not adopted yet. And of course, we have to now implement all these ambitious goals which we declared. There is moderate, I would say, assessment of the infrastructure, but it's rather to the electricity infrastructure than to the gas. Statistics, Ukraine has adopted the EU directives on statistics. And if you go to Eurostat, you can actually see in some data sets that Ukraine is also appears also in line with other EU states. And Acer, European CER, yes, they are including Ukraine and other energy community contracting partners in their assessment. Cybersecurity, moderate success. The World Bank assessed Ukraine like in the middle in terms of possibilities for decarbonization and how painful it will be to go through the decarbonization process. We are rich for resources. We also have use a lot of fossil fuels, but at the same time, as according to World Bank estimates, Ukraine can be quite flexible with switching, yes, to more green energy to decarbonization. That's actually the renewables. You can see how they increased their share in generation. That's because too generous feed-in tariff we had, but because actually it was too generous and the market could not generate so much money, we now collected such debts in front of towards actually the investors. So now we have to change and develop new schemes of support for renewables, and yes, pay all the debts which were collected. And one more issue here is how to integrate renewables into the system, because we have like 4 up to 5 gigawatts which our transmission system operator can accept, but the installed capacity is already around, I think it's here. Yeah, it's the share of solar, wind. So you can see how big share of solar generation is in comparison to other types. And this is the installed capacity. So more than 7 gigawatts already in place, while the TSO complains that it's too much. The TSO cannot balance so much of renewables in the system. So the additional work should be done with the transmission system in Ukraine. And the hydrogen, you asked me about hydrogen. So this is a map which, sorry, it's in Ukrainian, but this dark green are the regions where the hydrogen has a really big potential to develop. So yeah, it's, as you see, the wind.
The Crimea are included in this potential map, which actually in terms of the business realization potential can be rather low. But that's my next question, actually. This is, I see one positive message in everything you've said so far, and let me just see if I understood correctly. From what you're saying, it comes through to me that probably we can even consider that Nord Stream 2, in addition to Nord Stream, Blue Stream, Turk Stream pipelines, has been a positive development for Ukraine. Because what you're saying is now Ukraine, instead of thinking how to ensure the $3 billion transit fee every year, is thinking about how to switch its strategic role as a partner for Europe in the energy sector from a transit hub to energy producer. Can we say this? Is that the ambition that you are outlining there?
I think these two things can exist, together.
Just need to find a guess now.
Yeah, I can explain, because the hydrogen issue, for example, this is I think you will agree this is not what will happen next
Tomorrow.
year.
No.
Or even in
the
2
market
years.
is not there yet.
Yes. So this is something which we should, be patient, invest a lot, and do some projects with foreign companies. While at the same time, if our energy intensity is really huge, and this is our simultaneous homework to decrease our energy intensity, to increase our energy efficiency, to be more like with energy efficiency, like Europe, yes.
And just exactly about this.
And for this, we need money. We need money
just now. Benefit exactly? What can be the benefit that Ukraine can derive from this decarbonization strategy? Because you see, on the one hand, you say you need money, you particularly, but Ukraine needs money, and that's clear. And that could be, of course, an attractive possibility for Ukraine as an energy, the country which has to be transformed, and for the investors. However, the problem with Ukraine is that for the investors, from their perspective, often is that Ukraine doesn't pay, doesn't like paying, doesn't have the money to pay, and everybody's always scratching their head where and how they're going to get paid. This is one problem. And then very often, and I'm coming back to one of the issues you've presented in your presentation of transparency, right? Like your last slide. Very often the issue of kind of endemic corruption or local corruption which is kind of transversing the system, still persists in the feedback that we get when we exchange with people who do business in Ukraine, not necessarily only in the energy sector, but also in the energy sector. And finally, the very frequent changes of the political elites, which often in Ukraine result in also changes of the business elites, do not facilitate that investment climate, in the sense that sometimes it's difficult to kind of point out who is the person kind of to talk to. And to bounce off your last point about the renewable energy, right? Like the whole scheme of payment scheme, the tariff scheme that was adopted, right? Eventually, like, something that started off as something's greening investment eventually turned out to be kind of giving the money to the people who were close to the government, and pretty much some oligarchic structures benefited very well. And then you're saying at the end of the day, the government inherits the debt. So how what is the prospect? How much can Ukraine really derive the benefit of its decarbonization strategy, given all of these issues around transparency? And what can you say about the reform that has been going on in the energy sector? Because Ukraine has reformed a lot the energy sector. How far has it gone? What were the main issues that were reformed? Take an example of Naftogaz if you want. Take example of anything else. If you want Naftogaz, I'm thinking because, of course, it was notoriously corrupt and was a big, big problem for doing business in Ukraine in the energy sector. Please.
Yeah, thank you for tough questions. First of all, let me finish. I mean, if I may, with this money things. Because we have so many balls, on the table, we have to deal with, as you said rightly, with decarbonization, development of renewables, energy efficiency. Actually, I mean, changes in our industry, which is, it's a painful thing. I think all money, yes, all invested money will be needed. So that's why this transmission system operator, and I'm not only transmission system operator, but that's why Ukrainians are fighting so much for this possibility to keep the transit, because it's 1.5 billion euros per year. It's not, it's quite a lot of money, which we can invest also into some long-term projects. I proposed this to some German colleagues. I said, let's do it. I mean, let's keep that transit as much as possible through Ukraine. Let's agree that some percentage of this money will go to hydrogen development, let's say, or some other things. That will be the long-term investment. But I also agree with you that yes, we have there is still a lot of political risks, which many companies mention, and we know this. Regarding renewables, not only oligarchs actually invested in renewables. We had a lot of letters from embassies when this debt was collecting. Yes, and in the process of collecting this debt, we saw the statements, and you can easily find it from many embassies from the countries where the investors invested in this in these or that business of renewables. So this is for us, for Ukraine, this is also the question how to solve the problem with foreign investors and how to pay the debt to those who, should trust Ukraine in the future as well. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but something similar happened in Spain several years ago. And so they managed this issue.
Worst things happened. I don't know if managed is the right word, because just one day during after 2008 crisis, the Spanish government woke up, went on air and announced, you know what, everything we promised about this renewable projects, you can call it managed, this issue, but pretty much that was the short message. And it was not just about the future contracts, it was also about the past contracts. I'm not sure Spain is a very good example, but we can always, that you can also say also in Europe there are some counter exampple, that's for sure.
I just want to try what I'm trying to say, that we are in a learning process, so we are not the only one who made such mistakes. And we are learning. Again, we are learning how to read the EU directives properly, how to implement them properly. It's not an easy job, to reform the country within like such short period of time, when the other EU members started the process much more earlier.
The progress of reform that has been done.
Sorry?
What can you say about the progress of the energy reforms that has been done? What would you pinpoint?
Gas sector, I think, would be the most successul. Not everything has been done, but the most successful, I would say, because again, we had to integrate to the EU gas market after 2014 crisis, and we started to work with European traders. We started to reform the gas market, internal gas market. And we even made the market prices for all consumers. But then we had to, implement some regulated prices because of the crisis. But again, I think it will not take much more time to really do a successful gas market reform in the future. So we need to do some gas release program to force our state company, which produces gas. 70% of gas is produced by state-owned company. So we have to organize the sale of this gas through the platform, through the market rules. But this is doable. I mean, this is something which is in the plans, and I do hope that we do understand the goal and the results which we might have. In terms of electricity, it's more complicated. Yeah, I see Roman raised his hand. He also, I think, will add. In terms of electricity, it's much more complicated because we have too many producers with too many costs for generation. So if you have nuclear for generation with lower costs, you have thermal power plants which quite high costs, which work on coal. You have renewables who actually demand also to play with feed-in tariff. Not to play, I mean, sorry, to work within the framework of feed-in tariff. And all this should be properly regulated. Here, I would say still a lot of work should be done, more to be done. But at the same time, our transmission system operator has done a lot of good work, and they have changed a lot in terms of corporate reform. And we had some cooperation with OECD. And I have to say that Ukrenergo, our transmission system operator in electricity, is assessed quite good, quite well in terms of how it's operating, what the rules are in place, transparency issues. You can also go to its website and check, all the balance on an hourly basis. So that's not bad. And what else? Oil sector, not well developed, not well reformed, definitely. Although we have some more or less competition on the market, but we did not create the strategic reserves as European legislation demands, just as an example. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Elena. These are very good examples and a good overview of different sectors, not just limited to natural gas. But again, to say that the reforms, from what I understand, are ongoing as well. It's not really the end yet. Then maybe the last question from me, and then we're going to turn to the audience for the next 30 minutes. What are the scenarios for the Ukraine heating season this winter? Seeing that, let's say, Nord Stream 2 is launched, therefore, Russia doesn't owe anything to the European Union through Ukraine's pipeline. And then if therefore it can just increase the supplies to Ukraine itself as Russia sees fit. And considering the situation, of the Russia-Ukraine military conflict in Donbass, the annexed Crimea, etc., obviously diplomatic relations are very much frozen. So that can be used as a lever against Ukraine. And what is the probability of an energy crisis this winter in Ukraine? And could it escalate into a political crisis?
One more tough question. Thank you very much. So let me start from the assessment of our reserves, just to be fact-based. So we have several, as I said, several types of generation. So let's start from the gas sector. The gas sector, I think we have around 18 billion cubic meters in our storages, which is it's not so bad. We had less in some previous years. I have some slides I can also show you, comparison with different years, but it's not so bad. If we have mild winter, if we do not have any, crisis in Europe and can have possibility to buy gas also from Europe, I don't think there will be some serious crisis in gas sector.
And what is this possibility of buying gas from Europe? So this you mean via reverse gas flow, and that used to be there were two kind of points, Slovakia and Hungary, and now in the light of Russia-Hungary recent agreement, how do you see this going forward? Will Russia try to really cut Ukraine off from Europe via bilateral relations and thus leverage its own influence, or how do you see maybe more optimistically the future of the reverse gas flow pipelines?
Yes, yes, I understand this this question. So may I just finish with my winter preparation and then go to this? If we talk about electricity sector, I would like to say that where we have problem is the coal reserves, and we are not. We had to. I mean, we started the heating season with less coal in reserves than was planned and it was in previous years. But again, if the state companies and private companies buy additional coal as they promised within November, December, and in case there will be no some problems with its supply, we might not have energy crisis. What Russia and Belarus did, also very interesting case. In the previous years, when Ukraine had needed some more electricity for some short period of time, we bought a small percentage, but we bought some percentage of electricity from Belarus and Russia. And this year, we had some, let's say, games from Russia and Belarus side, because on the one day they agreed to provide electricity supply, but the next day they just disagreed. So there is such like a sort of game which we also see in gas sector with the EU, that we will manage this manually. Today we will agree, tomorrow we will control how much gas or electricity you will have to be able to bargain better or to negotiate better. So this, for us, it's a good lessons learned that we have to be prepared to work without relying, yes, on Belarus and Russia export. And joining ENTSO-E, this is something which Ukraine really would like to have in the future. Regarding gas supply, you are totally right. In case Russia stops gas supply through Ukraine, Ukraine will lose the opportunity for reverse flows, for virtual reverse flows, and only physical flows will stay. How the virtual gas flow works? That, for example, it goes from Ukraine to Poland, the gas, and Ukraine buys some gas in European companies, and then it takes this exactly amount from flow which goes from Russia to Poland, and so everyone is happy because Ukrainian pipeline has this needed amount of gas, the volume of gas, and the Ukraine already takes its gas at the Ukrainian territory, but it pays to European companies who bought it. If we stop physical flow, it's impossible. Yes, it means only physical reverse flow from the EU. But exit and entry-exit points of the borders of Ukraine and European countries, not all of them work in both directions. So you cannot use, for example, Hungarian entry-exit point to have physical flow from Hungary to Ukraine. And in Slovak also border, only part of the capacities you can use, because other part is reserved by Gazprom. And so again, for Ukraine, it might mean that Russia just does not allow us to use gas even from the EU. It tries to stop possibilities even to take and to buy gas from the European traders. For us, lessons learned, I think, of course, if the EU allows Russia to build Nord Stream 2 and stop gas supply, I don't know, it means probably will mean building more pipelines and interconnectors with Poland, for example. But again, it will take much more money. It will demand investors' participation and so on, and it will take time. and so on and so forth. So for the sake of what, I mean, we don't know, because as of now, everyone, everyone can receive the gas or get the gas volume needed without any problems. Roman, I saw you wanted to add.
I just wanted to say that the capacity for physical gas imports to Ukraine depends on whether it is firm or interruptible. If it is firm, we can do it easily with physical reverse. If it's interruptible, those capacities are not guaranteed, so they cannot be fully available all the time. And that's why we are talking about the need to develop more firm capacities on interconnecting points with Slovakia, where there are pipelines available but booked by legacy agreement of Gazprom Exports and Ustream, which is the Slovakian TSO, and developing the same firm capacity with Poland, where a new physical interconnection should be constructed. But again, this depends not only on Ukraine's intentions and plans, but also on the plans of Polish TSO, which is currently focused on some other projects to develop their gas system.
Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you, Roman. With this, we're going to turn questions to the audience. Maybe it's better if you just raise your hand and want to ask your question directly. I'm going to start with the questions from two participants who have left, but who have had the questions. So first, you can see them all in chat, Elena. Maybe the first one, right? Can European countries take part of the blame for the current crisis, raising energy prices, for example, and considering the move away from nuclear and dirty sources of energy like coal? This is making European countries more dependent on Russia for its energy consumption, question mark. Is it the time to blame the Europeans? Blame if you want to ask this question, you just tell me. Because it's not strictly Ukraine focused.
Yeah, I mean, this is really important question. I can say personally that I think all transition period is a complicated period. You know, it's all when you move from status quo to some new status quo, there are always some challenges, and I believe if Europe, and not only EU but Ukraine, we established this goal of decarbonization and go away from fossil fuels. That's a challenging period, which some crises will happen. We just have to be prepared for them. And of course, I think the countries who would like to stay and to keep their importance, yes, for consumers, like European market, such countries like Russia, they will try to fight. They will try to show that, yes, you are dependent on us, and we can actually create the problems for you. That's what they are doing, actually. They are saying that, you see, your market prices, your spot prices created such problems because you didn't sign long-term agreements with us, so we can play with your spot markets, and you will have such prices. But the answer to this, I think, is not that we should just refuse from decarbonization paths. The answer to this is how to prevent possible behavior from such countries in the future. And that's why, for example, I'm really positive regarding this idea of strategic gas reserves, because this is what is going on in oil sector. Yeah? So the solution to play this manipulation, to fight with manipulations in oil sector, this is to create strategic reserves and not to allow to play with demand. The same might happen in gas sector. Yeah, and also this development of other sources of gas production, like biomethane, in a short-term perspective.
Okay, thank you.
I would also add that while going through this path of decarbonization, you should also avoid the threat of new dependencies. And here, critical minerals are a keyword, since some of the new technologies require more lithium or titanium or other minerals, which are also controlled by authoritarian regimes, having nothing with rule of law and human rights protection. So you might be in another dependency from such regimes, maybe not Russian, but maybe Chinese one or someone else. So yeah, and another consideration is that coal exit is a difficult path, but simultaneous exit from coal is nuclear, and nuclear is a terrible path. And I'm pointing to the Berlin right now, since this dual transition in short and midterm makes Germany more dependent on gas. And guess who is taking advantage of this?
Thank you. Just another question about the pipeline. So this is, what is the minimum of the gas that has to be transmitted through Ukrainian pipeline in order to make it commercially viable? So out of 140 billion cubic meters, what is the minimum that can kind of be maybe a compromise in terms of cost? And then shall the pipeline be refitted to transmit this 20% of hydrogen add-on, so to say, without additional investment?
Mm-hmm. So thank you for this question. You know that the existing contract with Russia is that I think for the 2 years, yes, 2020, for the 2 years, we have the Gazprom will pay for 60 BCM and then for 40 BCM of gas transits through Ukraine. And so we had this discussion with transmission system operator. We tried to understand what is this commercially viable volumes. So we agreed, let's say, because I mean, Dixie could not do such calculations. We don't have enough data in place. But we agreed that 50 billion cubic meters might be the commercial viable volume, which can keep Ukrainian gas pipeline profitable. And again, you can just look at how many people are working in our TSO. It's like 10,000 people, 10,000 workers, which is quite a huge number. And all this maintaining work and all these things, this is a spending which should be included into the tariff. So we discussed and we agreed, let's say, on 50 BCM as a possible commercial viable volume which can be transported through Ukraine. And regarding this 20% of hydrogen, I'm afraid I cannot say now for TSO. I can say that our head of the board, yes, or member of the board of TSO, just recently said that the transmission system pipeline can already transport biomethane. But regarding hydrogen, I think we should wait until some internal homework will be done. They just started some internal assessments, calculations, and they promised to show results at the end of the next year. Probably we can say something about TSO's capacity, yes, to transport hydrogen next year. But regarding distribution system operator, I'm pretty sure they can already talk a lot about this. They did some work, they did some tests, and they can already provide you some results and discuss on this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Just about same thing on the very far future, as we said again, not immediate, but on hydrogen, of course, Russia is also positioning itself, and it's going to be positioning itself also with its own alternative pipelines, direct and indirect through Turkey, for example, or Belarus. And how do you assess this potential rival? For example, Rosatom, right, has already like opened a business unit on hydrogen, has been signing some framework agreements, etc., with European partners. Of course, the same European companies that are going to be targeted by Ukraine and Russia have much more facility, and including on a very personal level of high-ranking leaders of these companies to operate in Russia than to operate in Ukraine, because again, same people sitting in the same seats on both sides, in Russia and in Europe, for 20 years, 10 years, 15 years, know each other personally, very much are used to doing business together, versus getting to know every single, whatever, 4 years, 5 years, and new interlocutor from Ukraine, be it in the political or business circuit.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's not an easy task for Ukraine, but we have at least one advantage. Unlike Russia, Ukraine already agreed to play in accordance to the EU legislation and implement the EU rules, which means actually transparency, which means possibility for high standards in Ukraine, which means some more reliability in terms of investments. I think at some stage for the investors, that might be an argument. Again, as I said, we still are not there. We still are not the best EU regulated, with the EU legislation, yes, in place. But even if you compare 2014 and 2021, it's not so much time, like 7 years. You can see, a lot of reforms which has been done in energy sector. And I believe this is the advantage, this European rules, which Ukraine can put on the table for European investors. And Ukraine will be more understandable for them. Ukraine will, report in accordance to the European legislation. And hopefully the markets also will be more integrated, which also gives much more flexibility to transport goods and services from Ukraine to Ukraine, between the EU and Ukraine. So what you have with Russia, yes, you have much more resources in place. But can you say that they play all the time, all with transparent, with a high level of transparency, and always have this rule of law in place? I will leave this question as a rhetoric. I don't want to go into details of
this. Yeah, but I understand your point. Thank you. I see a question about Belarus. I know that you've addressed that point already. Maybe I just ask Alexander, has your question been answered by Alena's previous comments, or do you have any follow-up?
No, I don't have some additional comments.
Thank you. Then maybe I see that there is Elise Dahmani who asked a question about Ukraine. Maybe Elise, you want to introduce yourself and maybe present it in your own words.
Okay, so my name is Dahmani Elias. I'm a civil servant in French administration as an engineer in energies. So that's all.
So can you phrase your question, please? Just so you can ask it.
Okay. So do you think that the law on liberalization of the energy market in Ukraine in 2019 will have a positive impact on the development of renewable energy in Ukraine?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So we had several legislations which were adopted and impacted on the renewables, development of renewables. We had a law on electricity market, as you said, adopted, and we also had law on renewables adopted a bit later, which again, it created a new system of electricity market in Ukraine, which several markets, yes, bilateral agreement, contracts market, day-ahead market, balancing market, and others. And renewables generation is are players there. Yeah, I will be happy also pass the floor to Roman, but just wanted to say that the system in place, I think the system in place creates already a good opportunity for renewables development. What is the obstacles here is the proper regulation of different types of generation, including renewables. So you cannot develop one source of generation, renewables, and by killing, like, or by eliminating this, it's a right word, other sources of renewables like nuclear. So there should be some balance found on the market. And I think that we still are in the process of finding this balance. So the balance is not found yet. But the renewables, actually, they are part of the market already. The problem is that the rules are still not well fixed, well developed and fixed yet. So maybe I will pass the floor also to Roman.
Thank you, Elena. So the main idea is that enacted legislation was the transition from current support scheme for renewables, which is feed-in tariff, to auction-based system when the price of electricity would be defined based on competitive auctions of those developers. However, this transition is a bit prolonged due to the effect of historical debt for electricity produced by renewables. And just recently, there was an issue of green bonds to repay this debt. And we hope that this will be another push for a transition to the new auction system. Currently, the government also considers introduction of a feed-in premium system for those developers who will win those auctions in a way to financially stabilize the system of support to renewables. So again, this would largely define how fast new installations will be coming online with support schemes. But we have already some cases with utility level installations which are being constructed without any support. So they will be directly participating in the wholesale market, selling electricity not under feed-in tariff, but under wholesale price.
I can maybe show also some slide with the types of generation. Probably the colleagues can understand what the generation looks like. Sorry, a bit more slides, if I may.
And then we'll have time for one last question, and this is going to be, as you're preparing the slide, this is going
to be... Do you see the slide now?
In the...
Yes, perfect.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, just to show you our biggest consumers of coal, oil, and natural gas. If we talk about decarbonization, so we have a lot of potential in transport. We have 5 billion people who use buses. So if we just replace buses with some electric, I don't know, hydrogen, that also will be a huge investment into the decarbonization. And the industry is heavily dependent on coal and on gas and electricity as well. So we have, and they are big polluters. So we have a big issue how to reform our industry, steel production, chemistry production. this is quite a challenging thing in terms of CBAM implementation in the future.
But in the carbon border adjustment mechanism, a
Yeah.
tariff that the European Union will impose on 5 heavy energy industries, which export products to the European Union, so that everybody kind of aligns on the CO2 emissions, just in case our colleagues are not fully mastering all of the acronyms. Please go ahead, Elena, sorry.
I'm sorry. This is, I just took a picture. This is what you can find at the website of our transmission system operator. It shows you the hourly, the generation, different types of generation, their electricity production. So you can see actually the mix. It was why I took 19th of January, because it was a peak in consumption. So you can see the biggest one. It's a nuclear sector. Nuclear generation, and unlike France, I think that in France nuclear can balance. Yes, it's more flexible. But in Ukraine, our nuclear generation is not flexible. It cannot balance. It goes in a, like very stable production.
Of course, it's nothing. The flexibility is nothing compared to like a hydro plant, for example. But yes, it is. It has some flexibility.
Then we have CHPPs, combined heating power plants, which work with gas and coal. And we have a bit of renewables. You can see that why the system should balance, because they cannot produce a base. And then we have the thermal power plants. This is the pink one, the red one, which works mostly with coal, and and hydropower plants, which also participate in balancing. So CHPPs, thermal power plants, and hydro. So thermal power plants and hydro are participating in balancing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. This is very clear and good kind of overview of the subject in general. If we have any more questions, I think we have time for one more question maybe. I see Naomi Breitman was trying to ask a question. I know, Naomi, maybe everything that's been said from the beginning answered your question, at least in part, but if you still have a follow-up, please do not hesitate, if you're still with us. If not, if anyone else has a question, this is your chance. Just go ahead directly, or raise your hand if it makes you feel more comfortable. If not, we're going to give the world this 3 minutes of extra time by which we are going to finish this conference 3 minutes early. What an achievement. And to answer Danila Maisenka's question, we are going to be posting this the video, edited version of the video, so to cut off everything which was in the beginning, just start off with the actual introduction and whatever the necessary maybe and conclusions in the end. Just to say that our next conference is going to be on Russia, adjourning, of course, the discussion and continuing discussion about Ukraine on November 24th with Tatiana Mitrova, the Russian expert on energy who we invited, and also a French expert, Mathieu Azanot, from a French energy think tank. The Shift Project deals exactly with decarbonization primarily, but has also therefore dived into whole petrostate kind of topic. So if you are interested, stay tuned. We're going to be sharing the announcement very soon. And I would like to really thank from the depths of my heart. Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you so much, Roman, for joining us, for your excellent preparation and for exhaustive answers to our questions. Thank you. Have a great day and evening, everyone. Thank you for joining, and it was great seeing you all. And until the 24th of November. Bye-bye.
My gratitude to you, dear colleagues. So thank you very much for your, again, interest to Ukraine. And Dixie Group, our team is always happy to talk about Ukraine, to talk about European future, and to plan together how we will build up a future, energy future together. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.